Everyone, Dr. Drew here, and I wanted to share with you one of my favorite stretches, which is the hip flexor stretch, and a couple variations to go along with it. One of the reasons this stretch is so beneficial for a lot of people is because a lot of people spend a lot of time sitting down, and this muscle tends to get short, tight, and also pretty weak. So we want to make sure that we're addressing all those things as we're going through it. One of the first things we can do is begin to stretch. What that muscle does is it goes from the front of your leg here and attaches way deep down to the lumbar spine. And when it's tight, it'll actually pull your lumbar spine into this extended position, which can irritate the back of the vertebra, can cause the joints to rub together. Also, it can cause just tightness in your hip, which can lead to issues in your hip joints themselves, even down into your knees and feet because of all the different compensations. So we want to make sure we address this and a couple other things along with it. This video we're going to go over stretching of the hip flexor and, like I said, a few different variations. The first thing you're going to want to do, get something to cushion your knee because you're going to spend a couple of minutes on each side on the knee itself. So the knee's down, the other foot's up, starting position is up nice and tall. Sometimes just being here and getting a little bit of tuck of the pelvis underneath is all it takes to feel the stretch on the front of that hip. From here, you're just going to stay up nice and tall and breathe into it. Working on your posture, so tuck the chin, pull the head back behind you, working on staying up nice and tall. If you're not feeling the stretch, all we do from here is just slightly go forward 2 or 3 inches. Once you begin to feel it right here on the front of the hip, you just hold this position and breathe. That's the very basic version. Hold it for 30, 45 seconds, all the way on up to a minute. Second variation you can do is we start from the position where we're up nice and tall, tuck the pelvis, take a breath in. As you exhale, you go forward, 3, 2, 1, come back, reset, tuck the pelvis, get up nice and tall. You can use your hand here on your knee and go forward for 3, 2, 1. And then you can repeat that anywhere from 3 to 5 times, switch to the other side. It should take you, again, like I said, about 30 seconds all the way up to a minute to complete all those different things. The other thing you can try to do as well, I'll show you from the front, is you can also try leaning away from the knee that's down. So in this case, my right knee is down. I'm going to tuck the pelvis underneath, staying up nice and tall. And then I'm going to reach across, up and across with the right arm to lean away from the right leg. That should also help increase a little bit of that stretching sensation. You can also rotate a little bit, so I'm rotating towards the left as I'm tilting away. There's so many different variations you can do. Don't want to add too much for you, but those are kind of the 3 main ones that we can go through. The second part you can get is actually a little bit more of an intense stretch on the front of your quad, because there's another bit of the hip flexor muscle that goes down to your knee, and it requires you to keep your knee bent even more so while doing the stretch, and you'll feel it. So what we're going to do is put a pillow or your rolled up yoga mat right in front of your chair, couch, whatever it is that's about this height. That way, when your knee is on the ground, your foot will be elevated, which gives you a much tighter bend in your knee. From here, we're up nice and tall again, and all we're gonna do is work on tucking the pelvis underneath, staying up tall. Again, use your knee here for stabilization. If you're doing this correctly, you'll feel this almost instantaneously just by adding a little bit of tuck of the pelvis. It doesn't have to be intense. In fact, for some people, being up tall this way can really cause a great stretch, almost to the point where it's somewhat painful. So if you need to, you can just slightly bend forward, but I want you to work on tucking the pelvis underneath and slowly coming up this way. Again, hold this for 30 seconds, all the way on up to a minute. And if you want to intensify the stretch, if it's not much of a stretch for you at all, then what you can do is work on a contract, relax method, which is tuck the pelvis, contract, push your foot into the chair to contract your quad, hold that for anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds, and then as you relax, you come back even a little bit farther, keeping the glute tucked, but you let go of pushing your foot into the chair. That's your second variation. Now, the third variation, some people can't put their knee on the ground, but they still want to be able to try to stretch the hip flexor muscle. So we don't necessarily need to be with the mat on the ground. All we need to do is stand with a split stance, so feet are side by side, parallel, almost like you're standing on railroad tracks. You want to make sure that the back foot does not turn out to the side, okay? So if I'm looking at you from the front, both feet are facing straight forward. From here, if you need something to help you balance, that's totally fine. Get a wall, whatever it has to be. Remember, when we're doing certain stretches, we're going for the stretch, not necessarily having to work on balance. So use whatever you need to do this. You can work on balance at another time. From here, we're going to come up on the ball of the foot, of the back foot, getting up nice and tall. Then we're going to try to tuck the pelvis underneath, and you'll feel maybe that back leg bends a little bit. That's totally fine. And then you start to let yourself move forward as the front knee bends, trying to keep that back leg as straight as possible, squeezing the glute. This is a variation that can be kind of challenging for some people because it does require a lot of strength of the legs just to hold this position. The other option for this is to use the chair or a table that's about knee height that will actually be a little bit of assistance or a tool for you. So what I'm going to use here is my chair. This chair is just a little bit below my knee. And so what we're going to do is bring the foot up onto the chair. That provides me that position of almost as if I'm putting one knee up and one knee down. From here, all I do, make sure I have my balance, and again, work on tucking the pelvis underneath and bringing the knee forward. Okay, and just from there, I can feel the stretch. If you want to increase it, you can lean away, maybe even rotate a little bit, and you just work on holding this position, because one of the most important things where I keep saying squeeze the glute is in order for that muscle, the front of the hip, to relax, I have to contract the opposite muscle. So the same way, in order for you to bend your elbow, you have to contract this one, the one on the back has to relax. The same thing happens for the hip. In order for it to go into its standing up tall position, I have to squeeze the glute muscles in order for the ones on the front to relax, which are the hip flexors. So constantly think about that. The more intensely you can contract these, the more likely you are to get some relaxation out of the front. And that is one of the keys here. In addition to feeling a stretching sensation, you want to make sure that you're strengthening the muscles, because sometimes they're tight because they're weak. And it's important to work on that strengthening as you're going through this. You can simply just work on picking your leg up high as you can. That's a great start for you to work on strengthening the hip flexors. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message. I'm always here to help you, and I hope it helps.